right, so welcome everybody to our Spiritual Experiencers meeting. And my name is Catherine, and I'm so happy to be here with all of you. And tonight, I am so excited because a friend of mine, her name is Lynne McGinnis, she's going to be sharing her journey with us. And so I just want to give a little intro for Lynne, and then we're going to bring her into the spotlight. So, Lynne McGinnis is a former attorney who spent over 22 years with a large prosecuting agency, appearing in courts throughout her state. In late 2023, Lynne had a stress-related breakdown caused by overwork and imbalance in her life. In the spring of 2024, Lynne began to embark on a spiritual journey which continues to unfold. Her ongoing spiritual awakening has inspired her to share her story and experiences with others who feel called to find the inner peace and unconditional love that lies beyond the material world. So, Lynne, I just want to welcome you and say thank you so much for being here and for sharing your journey with us. I so look forward to it.
Well, I'm honored to be here. It's I'm a little nervous, but I've just got to let go. And it's important for me to share this every time I share with anybody or write anything or anything about my journey, is that this is my journey. So when I say, and just so I don't have to say that every time, because I don't want anyone to think that I'm giving them any advice or telling them this is the way to God or this is what you have to do to be spiritual or whatever. This is just my journey. I don't know how many people there are in the world, but it's my firm belief that as many people as there are in the world, that's how many paths there are to God. This is
Mhm.
my path, but I'm honored to share it because it's interesting to me and it's amazing to me because no one would have thought a person like me would have a spiritual journey at all, much less this one. And I'm going to go fairly quickly through my younger years because sometimes what happens is I get buried in all the trauma and I don't get to the fun stuff, which is the experiences. So
Okay.
I'm gonna try to go quickly through it, but give enough of a background so that it's all in perspective.
Okay.
Just for so people understand the dates of everything and when things happened. I turned 70 years old about a week ago.
Oh, happy birthday.
Thank you. Which means I was born in February of 1956. I have, just to give some context to the years, my middle brother was born in June of 1957 and my younger brother in September of 1959. So I'm the oldest. We grew up in a very affluent neighborhood, so no wanting of material things. As I shared with another group, it was Pacific Palisades, the area which had the fires last year in January 2025. So that community is not there anymore. It's sad, but that's where I grew up. And I'm going to give some spiritual explanations later, but just from a human perspective, things did not go great in childhood. I know people have a lot worse childhoods, so I'm not diminishing that. But for me, my mother and I just didn't get along from the time I was born. My mother decided that this child there's something wrong with this child here, practically from the from the time I can remember. So when she told me this later, when I was about 2 years old, she saw me picking up cigarette butts in the park and other objects and eating them, and she thought, babies don't do this. There's something wrong here. She didn't think there was something wrong with my brothers. So when I was a little older, I started having a few spiritual experiences. When I had some regressions, which I'll get to, I found out that I was a boy in my last life and I died fairly young. So when I was a little kid, I was convinced I was a boy, and I don't remember why. I was just convinced I was a boy. So I told my parents about it, and I was having dreams about this, and I said, I'm a boy. Someone took me into an operating room and did something to me. And my mom said, well, you're nuts or something like that. And then about the same age, I had some kind of fight with another kid. So my mom said, you're really nuts. And she carted me off to a child psychiatrist. And that didn't help my self-esteem because I knew what a psychiatrist was. So from about the beginning, I had no self-esteem, no self-love, and did not grow up in a family with a very loving mother. And my father, I don't, I'm blocking a lot of it out. What I do remember is he was loving sometimes, but he was a functioning alcoholic. So he would come home from work and drink a lot and drive when he was drunk and drive us when he was drunk. And he wasn't really there for at least me. And it was me and my mother fighting, 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 fighting. And it got worse as I was a teenager and we call each other names. The two things that are important for this group, and there's a lot of fighting over a lot of different things, is that as many of you know, because I've shared in groups, my lineage is Jewish, so that's where my lineage is. My parents were atheists, so they told us that not only that there was no God, but that anybody who believed in God was just deluding themselves, and they were believing that because they were afraid of death or they were just stupid or gullible. They also told us, I don't know how the subject of death first came up. Probably my middle brother got afraid of death or something like that. And they told us, well, when you die, you die. That's it. Um, you're, that's the end of it. So have fun or whatever. And it was the negativity was compounded by the fact that they thought the world was it was a very dangerous place for them because they grew up during the Holocaust, even though they were in the United States. So it was there's no God, and God wouldn't allow human suffering, and death was the end. So, and not only did they say that, but they didn't expose us to anything else. They said, I didn't know anything but that because religion isn't taught in schools. So I got very frightened of death at a very early age, and my brothers got frightened. And they were sent us to a Jewish centers camp, and but it was cultural, not religious. I still knew nothing about the religion. And the directors, and this was 1966, so 21 years after World War II ended, they decided it would be a good idea to show kids grisly footage of the Holocaust, and it was not pleasant. So then I started to get afraid of death and horrors. There was the news on all the time with footage of Vietnam War going on. So this world is a dangerous and unfair place. And then we got to see this footage. So then I started thinking about death. The other thing I started thinking about is food. My mom was fat as a kid, so she started monitoring my weight when I was about 10. She said I would, I'm 5'1" or 5'2". At some point, she got it in her head that I could not weigh more than 95 pounds. So that went on for years and years and years, which was hard because I was so lonely as a kid that food became my one comfort, and all I ever thought about was food. When I was 17, I started developing an obsession with aging. All I could think about was aging. So what ended up happening with the fears of death is that when I would, as a kid, these fears caused me such panic that I made up a story, which I believed as a 10-year-old. I thought to myself, well, by the time I'm 60 or 40 or whatever, humanity will have advanced so much that they will have invented a pill and we'll all live forever. And that got me out of the kid fears I had. At the same time, I was unhappy as a kid, and not always. I was being bullied a lot. And so I was very unhappy because I was bullied. And I was one of the only Jewish kids in the school, and I was bullied, and I was afraid of children, and I had no self-esteem. So I was a target for a particularly mean group of bullies. And then I had these fears. And back to childhood, I did have more spiritual thoughts, which were pretty much squelched. I would look at the stars and say, there's got to be something out there besides us. I would look for spaceships in the yard and say, a spaceship's going to land here someday. Next time I look around the corner, there's going to be a spaceship here. I love science fiction. I love the idea of time travel and space travel and dimensional travel. I would read some books, and I've shared this before. There was one book I read when I was very young, and they had something about a Mobius strip and time travel, and Mobius strips like a infinity symbol.
Mhm.
And somehow I really understood this. I said, this makes a lot of sense. This is how we time travel. This is how we can time travel. So there was some of that. I had dreams about flying. I don't know if they were dreams or out of body experiences now. So I would fly out of my yard and just be flying. So there were pleasant experiences. When I was about, and I kept having bullying experiences. I was bullied in camp. I was bullied in school. I was bullied everywhere. I started creating excuses not to go to school. It was not pleasant. And every time I was bullied, my mother would say, it's because of you, not because of the bully. When I was 13, I shared this experience with groups before. I went to visit my in-laws in New York, my grandmother, and I was standing there one day waiting for my grandmother, like by some subway tracks, and the death fears came out of nowhere. And I tried to tell myself the little kid story, and it didn't work because I thought, I'm a miserable kid. I don't want to live forever. So then it was just horrible because I don't want to live forever and I don't want to die. So I just stood there panicking. Teenagerhood is kind of a blur, except that it was filled with, bullies, and after the bullies, it became about my fears because there were nice kids in this school, but I was afraid to go up to them. I was just afraid to go up to them. So I'd sit by myself and imagine myself being with these kids, like daydreaming about it. I'll intersperse a few spiritual things that happened. When I was 15 or 16, I went to camp for maybe one of the last times, and I had a boyfriend there. And the boyfriend had a friend. And something about this friend was, I've got to meet this person. I just got to meet this person. And when the boyfriend and I, became friends instead of boyfriends, I said, will you introduce me to this person? His name was David. I want to meet him. I want to go out with him. I said, sure. And finally, David asked me out. I believe it was when I was 16, it was 1972. And we went to a movie, and I don't know if we held hands. He didn't kiss me. It was more like a friend date. But there was something that I've never ever had with anybody else. It was an electric feeling. It's like this person and I are just so connected. We're so connected. And I had no idea what was going on until 2001 when I had my first regression and learned that David is my soulmate, which was really interesting. And that was the only time he was going to be in this life was that brief moment for one date. At age 17, I wanted to get away from my mother, and I just loved French. I always loved the French language, so I took classes in French. I had it with high school. So I went to live in southern France for a year, and I got bullied there. And one of the problems was I'd annoy kids so much because I was afraid of them that they'd get tired of me. And I was there for a year. And toward the end of the year, I was walking. I would take walks because I'd come home at Christmas and my mom was chiding me about having gained weight. So I'm like, I've got to lose weight. So I was walking through a poppy field or something. It was springtime, and I felt such peace and such calm. And it was the first time I'd ever felt that way. And it was just amazing. And the feeling went as I walked, and then it was gone. And I didn't have a frame of reference for it. So I kind of filed it away and forgot about it. I continued to obsess about age, weight, and death. When I was 18, I went away to college. I first went to UC Santa Cruz. When I got there, I took up running, distance running compulsively, and I became anorexic. So I got down to 82 pounds, and that was not very healthy. I thought, well, I'll be fine if I just come live with mom. Why I thought that was going to help, I don't know. See, I kept going back to destructive situations. I kept going back to the same situations. The one experience I had there was like the one in when I was 17. I was on a hill with somebody, and there was just this feeling of peace and calm and an overwhelming sense of peace, and it was wonderful. I was sent to a psychiatrist again when I was 16 for who knows what reason. And the psychiatrist said I was schizophrenic and put me on an antipsychotic medication, which turned me into a zombie. My mother sent me for a battery of psychiatric tests or psychological tests and wouldn't give me the results. All sorts of things happened. I came back to Los Angeles where I lived for college, went to UCLA, and I had a professor who all he could talk about was death. He was an English professor. And he was a bit in his early 30s and I was 20, and I could not sit in the class. There came the panic back again. Other times I would just stuff it and throw it out of my mind and focus totally on the material world because I didn't want to think about being nothing, because that thought of the whole of nothingness, being nothing forever and ever, just being non-existent, was just too frightening. And I couldn't sit in the class, so I made a friend. I said, I can't sit. I had a friend. I can't sit in this class anymore, I told her. And I need to pass the test. Even though it's an open book, I'm gonna fail because I can't listen to this. So for the only time ever, she gave me, this is the only time I've ever done this. She gave me like speed or some kind of upper and said, take this, you'll pass the test. And I did pass the test, but that was not a preferable way of passing a test. So the following year, which was 1977, I met who's now my husband. And I'm not going to discuss that relationship much at all because it's personal and it's personal. But I met him in 1977. We got married in 1978. And in July, in December of 1978, we went to visit his in-laws. He has one sister. And somehow the subject of religion came up. And she asked me if she has a certain set of religious beliefs, which is her path. And I'm not faulting her for that path or judging it. But she asked me if I had the same set of religious beliefs. And I told her I don't know much about this, but my family is Jewish and the Jewish faith does not believe this. And my parents are atheists and I don't know what I believe. And she said, because I hadn't formed any beliefs. I wasn't an atheist, but I just didn't know. All I knew was death was the end. That's because they told me, I asked about the soul once and they said there's no scientific proof of the soul. That's nonsense. And every time I'd bring up something, it would be like, it's nonsense. And so these are my parents. You believe them. I didn't know. She told me, well, since you don't share my beliefs, basically you're going to hell for all eternity. I started arguing with her. 22-year-olds like to argue. And we got in this big argument, and she said, well, that's what the Bible says. And I told her, I've never read the Bible, but that's ridiculous. It didn't make any sense to me. I told her that was ridiculous. And it was ridiculous to me. It was not to her, but I didn't understand it because it's not part of the Jewish faith or atheism. And I never heard anything like this before. So I, I just rejected it and tried not to think about death at all again. I couldn't think about it, but I kept thinking about age and food. For the next 8 years, then I went to law school, which was very competitive, very, very competitive. We were fighting with each other to get good jobs. We were fighting with each other to get good grades. It was this competition. It was all competition, competition. Who's going to be the best? Who's going to be the best? I didn't get any jobs like other people did. I got a job I didn't like, so I managed to, they fired me after a short time, and it was partly because I didn't want to be there. So the job didn't work out. Law school was competitive and cutthroat and very material, to say the least. I had a series of jobs that didn't work out because I was hated myself, and I managed to do things to make people not like me. I continued to hate myself all through this whole period. Just hate myself. I knew nothing else because I'd been told, you're not good enough, you're defective. When I was 30, and I've told this part of the story, I dreaded turning 30. It was like, that's the end. Death is next, and I'll be nothing. Basically, that was the thought. I obsessed for years about turning 30. 3 months after I turned 30, I was driving to work. I worked for myself. I was helping a friend with a project, and I thought I was on the freeway on the near the right-hand lane, and I thought, I'm going to die someday. It just came out of nowhere because that's what would happen with these things. It caused a panic attack, and I went careening off the freeway and crashed into a median divide. At that time, nobody was hurt. My car was totaled, but nobody was hurt, me or anybody else. And at the time of the legal work I was doing, because I started doing legal work in 1981, I started with civil law, and I went to criminal law, and it was what's called appeals work, where someone loses an appeal. They've been sentenced and they want to appeal something, so it goes to a higher court. I had been doing that in civil work. I had this panic attack, and you'd think that would, or I would think that would like cause me to do something about feeling like a victim all the time, because that was another problem. I was always victim, victim, victim. It didn't. The psychiatrist said it's a brain disorder. Here's this medication. It'll fix you. The medication made me feel better. And somehow 2 years later, I heard of a 12-step program. So I thought, what's that? And I went to that. They talked about a higher power, and I said, that's all bullshit. And they kicked me out of the 12-step program. I'm like, does anybody get kicked out of a 12-step program? I went to a behavior modification program 2 years before that, and they said, well, you can change your behavior and help with anxiety. And I said, that's bullshit. It's a brain disorder. So they kicked me out of that program. And I just went on and on and on, feeling sorry for myself. I was doing the criminal defense work part-time, the appeals work, and feeling sorry for myself, spending half my time working and half my time in my room. I did keep exercising in moderation. What ended up happening is 6 years later, in 1992, I was 36, it was toward the summer. I had feral cats would come into our yards, and I'm a fat cat lover. And I found a box of kittens in the yard. Someone had left them, and they were cute. They got adopted out. And I picked up the kittens, and I started bawling my eyes out. And I said, I'm tired of being a victim. Something's got to change. This is enough. So I said, I'm going back to a 12-step program, and I'm going to see what this is all about. So I went to a 12-step program, and a friend there told me about a metaphysical church, and I started attending that in 1993. And in 1992, right early on, I made a really good friend in the 12-step program, and I was at her house, and she was the first person I'd ever told how terrified I was of death. And so she asked me something like, what do you think happens when you die? And I told her, well, my parents told me this, and my sister-in-law told me this, and these are awful. And she said something like, those aren't the only alternatives, or something like that, and said, will you read a book if I give it to you? And I said, sure. And she gave me Life After Life by Dr. Raymond Moody on near-death experiences. And so I read that, and I'm like, wow. I never heard anything about this. This is amazing. This is really amazing. So I started looking for what more books there were on near-death experiences, and there weren't many in 1992 or in the 90s. There were some. So I would go to metaphysical bookstores in the spiritual center I was at, and also there was one in near where I lived in San Diego, and I would search for every book I could find on near-death experiences. And after a while, I just started looking around to see what I was just looking for them or something. Are there any more out now? And I noticed, I think it was books on reincarnation. And I was like, what is this? I never heard of this either. Because all I remembered about it was that I had a comparative religion class when I was about 20, but I didn't remember anything they taught me. And I remembered, for those of you who are old enough to remember, I remember Shirley MacLaine talking about past lives in the early 80s. It was about 10 years earlier. And my family saying she's talking about this and she's gone nuts. They were laughing at her and saying she's gone nuts because she's talking about this. And I didn't know what they were talking about. And I knew nothing about our soul. So it's like past lives didn't make any sense to me, and they were making fun of her. But I found these books and I said, I got to read these. So I started reading. I think the first one I read was Many Lives, Many Masters by Brian Weiss. And I read some others. And to me, and again, this is my journey, I felt this is the only explanation of life and death that makes sense for me. This makes sense. Nothing those other people are telling me makes sense to me. My fear of death started to diminish. And I studied spirituality from 1992 to 2001. The whole time I was still very much into my ego. I hated myself. I really hated myself. I was trying to prove myself in the spiritual community. I was jealous of people in the spiritual community. I tried to make a name for myself in the spiritual community. I had all the old thinking patterns. And I had some experiences though. In 1994, I was sitting in the church sanctuary, the spiritual center, and I had this overwhelming unconditional love like I had had as a teenager, but it was much more overwhelming and powerful. And I thought, this is God. And any doubts I had from what my parents had taught me vanished. So I was looking for more books in 1997. And I came across Journey of Souls by Michael Newton about the life between lives. And Michael Newton had accidentally discovered through doing a past life regression session, the person had gone into the spirit world, into their life between lives, what they were doing in the spirit world in their life between lives. And I got that book, it like called out to me, and I started reading this book, and I'm like, this is amazing. I started underlining things and like this 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 is something that's really resonating at a deep level. And I that book just really opened my eyes. I wasn't at all having a spiritual awakening because of my ego problems and but the book really amazed me. So the following year, I had a series of, I call them dreams or visions. They're more like visions because I remember every single detail of them, even though that was 28 years ago. And on a date in April, I remember the date and time, I had this dream or vision, and I was in a room. It was a room. The room was empty except for a hall of mirrors on my left, like mirror after mirror after mirror. And I noticed a figure behind me, a figure with a male figure in his, looked like a male in his early 20s with dark shoulder length hair and really kind, wise eyes and just compassionate. And it didn't scare me at all. He was behind me, but I could see him through the mirror and if I looked behind. And I wasn't scared, and I knew I could communicate with him telepathically. So telepathically, I asked him, "Who are you? Who are you?" And he gave me a name, his name, and he said, "I'm your spirit guide." And I, the name, like rang a bell, even though I hadn't had an experience like this. And I knew how to spell the name, even though the name, you wouldn't think it would be spelled this way if for the way it's pronounced. And he showed me some things in these mirrors. He showed my past self and my future self. In the past, I was miserable, and in the future, I was really happy. So this got me intrigued. And Michael Newton, the author of Journey of Souls, was still doing these sessions at the time. And he lived in California, near Sacramento, and I'm in San Diego. So I wrote away to him, his publishing company, and I asked, "Can I see him for this? I want more. I want to know more." And he had a 3-year wait, but I saw him in May 9, 2001, May 9, 2001. And a lot of the session was not recorded, but the Life Between Lives session was recorded. So at the end of the session, I it I got 3 messages during this session. The first message was I was focusing on my body too much because I was obsessing about age, weight, and not death anymore, but age and weight. Um, the second message was I could communicate with the guide and ask for guidance anytime. I didn't have to wait to see if I had another dream like this. And the third one was until I learned to unconditionally love myself, I wouldn't progress and nothing would change, something like that. And I had never heard of unconditional self-love. I hadn't even heard of self-esteem. So I listened to the recording about a week later, and I didn't hear those messages somehow. And the lack of self-esteem continued, the lack of self-love continued, the obsessions with aging continued. The following year, I applied for the work with this prosecuting agency. I thought I'd just be happy if I was a prosecutor instead of a defense attorney. I applied with this agency and I started working with them. And from the moment I started working with them, I was sure that because I was so defective, as soon as they got to know the true me, they were going to fire me. So I tried to please everybody. I tried to do everybody's work. I did everybody's work. I took on extra work. I was working all the time and I dropped all the spirituality. I just dropped it. I wasn't afraid of death, but I just dropped it. I stopped reading the books. I stopped going to the spiritual center. I stopped going to the 12-step program. And I worked harder and harder and volunteered for more and more work. And starting with COVID, I started to get depressed. I won't go into this because it'll take so long, but I had a case in 2023 that the office lost that no one thought we were going to lose. And when we got the ruling on that, shortly thereafter, I woke up one morning and I tried to do my work and had crashed. I didn't understand the work. I was anxious and depressed and I just didn't understand the work at all. It made no sense to me. I thought it would change after a vacation. It would not. So I went into an intensive outpatient program to avoid psychiatric hospitalization. And that program, it was invaluable because it was cognitive behavioral therapy, which taught the types of thinking patterns that are distortions that lead us to anxiety or led me to anxiety and depression, like catastrophic thinking, always assuming the worst. Um, just all these patterns. It talked about affirmations, which I learned in the spiritual center. It talked about various tools that to use. Thought records, if a thought comes up and I start to feel anxious, what was the thought that triggered it and what is the alternative thought? By the end of the 3 months in the program, they discharged me and I took 3 months of disability from work. And I started seeing a very spiritual minded therapist as well as she's cognitive work too. When they discharged me from the program, now it gets to the last 2 years or so, I was not anxious or depressed anymore. And I started working full time on May 1st, 2024, but I still felt empty inside. I felt empty. Something's missing here. I still feel empty. And then it was like, boom, return to the spiritual work and do the work this time. Don't just read about it and feel sorry for yourself. Do the work. Now you know how not to feel sorry for yourself. Just do the work this time. So in May of 2024, I made sure I balanced in my life. I had a yoga class and I had meetups and things like this. So the first thing I did, the books I reread were the two by Michael Newton. He wrote two books, one in that Journey of Souls and one in 2000, Destiny of Souls. I read the books again, and then I thought, I wonder if I still have that recording, that cassette tape from 2001. So I found it in a box of tapes with other tapes from the 90s, and I had a cassette recorder. So I listened to it again for the first time since 2001. And I heard the messages I had missed the first time around. I heard the messages about focusing on my body. I heard the messages about my guide, asking for guidance. And I heard the message about unconditional self-love. I was already much better about the body thing. The aging thing was still a problem. And I had self-esteem, but I didn't have unconditional self-love. I did have self-esteem by then. So but things started to change. And the reason they started to change is because I started asking my guide for guidance. And I started developing a conscious relationship with my guide that I could hear the guidance. I got it by automatic writing. I got it by synchronicities. And to this day, more and more, I can feel the connections. I can feel the unconditional love. It's like sweeps through me, the unconditional love. And I can hear the guidance, not as like a voice for me, but just a telepathic communication. The same communication that had advised me to pick up the spirituality. And the same communication that had communicated to me before, but I hadn't been listening. And so things started to transform. So I went back to the spiritual center I had been at. And what I didn't share is that I saw Michael Newton for this session in 2001. And I did not tell a single person, including my husband, I saw Michael Newton. I was afraid to tell anybody. I did not know what people would think. There was nothing like we have today. And it was towards the end of my spiritual work. So I didn't tell anybody who was at the spiritual side. I told nobody about it. And that was the second problem at work. Once I was at work, it's like, I'm not going to tell anybody at the prosecuting agency about this. I'm not going to talk about this at a prosecuting agency. It's a government official and they're going to lock me in. It's all the old fears. What are they going to think of me? Now I wouldn't care. So what? But then it was like, what are they going to think of me? It'll keep me from being a super attorney, all this stuff that's depending on the outer. So I didn't tell anybody about it. In August, so I started to have some feelings of peace, love, and a little less focus on the aging thing. And the weight thing was no longer, when we were in the program, they used to weigh us, and I stopped. And once the program stopped, I stopped weighing myself. I didn't really care about that anymore. And I just started to feel more peaceful and more calm. And I didn't know about this group. The spiritual center I went to was not one that I could talk to about Michael Newton or life between lives. They had the belief in reincarnation, but I only knew one person there who had had a session like this, and I didn't feel comfortable talking about it. I could talk about other things. And the spiritual leader, I'd been with her in the 1990s at that center until I went to another one. And the leader, she was like kind of hesitant to even say there was a God, which was a little uncomfortable. And a lot of the services were like on relationships and things that I can get from a therapist. So, but I got some community there, but I didn't talk about this. So in August of 2024, I'm changing and changing and changing. I can feel the changes coming, little by little. More peace, more focus, more faith. I was back. I was focused. I had the focus at my work. And I was insulated at work because prosecuting work, even at the appeals level, is very dark because have to read the facts of the crimes that people are committing. You have to read the grisly facts of the crimes people are committing, and I won't go into any of those. I was insulated because I had a specialty area and it did not involve any facts. It was all law. So I could stay away from the facts and just look at the law. So in August, I thought I joined some Facebook groups that had to do with life between lives and Michael Newton. And in August, I thought, well, I wonder what happened to him. I think that happened first because he was 70 when I saw him in 2001. And he only saw 7,000 people in between 1968 and 2001. I thought this probably faded out, it was interesting. So I looked it up and he passed in 2016. But I really was surprised to see that he had trained other people to do this work. And now there were other people doing this work. And there are now over 200 people doing this work all over the world, and that over 70,000 people had done these sessions from the original 7,000. So I joined this Facebook group, and in November 2024, one person posted, because they were doing that training, he said, well, if you ever fancy another soul journey through life between lives, compare the two recordings because it's really changed since 2001. And then I got the guidance, you got to do this again. And I had no intention of doing it again. I thought I got all I could get in 2001. So I'm like, yeah, I've got to do this again. So through a series of synchronicities, and I won't go into that because it's too long, I found the perfect facilitator. He's the best, in my opinion, he's the best of all 200, but I'm biased. And he was in the Los Angeles area. So I went up there in December 2nd, 2001. I'm sorry, 2024. And this is where more experiences started because it had expanded since 2001. And some of my experiences there was what happens is and I won't go through all the technical stuff. I go into a pure state of soul awareness beyond my body, and I'm in the spiritual realm in the life between lives. So I'm a soul in the spirit world. And it's a beautiful experience for me because I've never had a near-death experience, but when I hear the descriptions, it sounds very similar because it's the same unconditional love, the same timelessness, the same knowing I'm more than this body. And I went into the spiritual realm, and it was just an amazing experience. And it was much better than what Michael Newton had done because he had kind of a method that he stuck to, and he was pretty rigid about it. And I went there and I saw all sorts of things and I experienced all sorts of things. And I learned a lot. I learned in that session, I learned that about the soul planning that went into some of my relationships, not my family relationships, other relationships. I met with a wise council of what I call a council of elders or wise ones. There were three of them, and that was so loving and through the whole experience. And it's so ethereal, it's non-describable. It's like you had one of these, I can't describe it, doesn't do it justice. But what struck me about this is I kept saying, I'm home, I'm home, this is home, I'm home. And I just knew it was home. And then things started well, during that session, one of the questions, because we can bring a list of questions I asked, why am I here now, in this body? And the answer I got was to learn unconditional self-love, to learn unconditional love of others, and when I'm ready to somehow help the spiritual awakening on this planet. So I asked, well, how am I going to do that? Who am I? Well, I didn't say it that way. And one of the questions I had was about my work. Do I retire? Because I'm well past retirement age here and I'm still working. And the answer I got from my council of wise, the council of elders was, it was something like, for now, keep doing what you're doing, start opening up more to people, don't be afraid. And when it's time for you to leave your work and devote yourself to this full time, we will tell you. I didn't get an answer. So I kept doing my work and I'm watching the time. In January of 2025 last year, I ended up having to make a court appearance on a case that was just making me ill. It was a case I had worked on a while, but it was the most grisly crime I've ever seen. And from day one, it made me ill. So I went back to them and I asked during a meditation, I said, this is making me ill. I know you said you will tell me. Is this the time or do I keep doing this? And what I got from them is that you can start, you know about job stress. You can put up a website, and if people want to talk to you about job stress in your path, they can go to your website and you can help them. And basically, I could leave the work. So that was my last case, and I left. The next month, I found out about these groups through a friend of mine at the one guy who'd had the Life Between Lives sessions. And things just kept transforming. There are so many experiences. In March, I was still struggling a little with self-love, March of about a year ago. And I was meditating. And all of a sudden, I had this, from deep within me, I had this experience where it just came to me, you are magnificent. You are part of God. You are magnificent. And this just love just bubbled up with me. And I had all these types of experiences where I constantly felt my guide, which was a wonderful experience. It came to me more and more from the head to the heart that I am not this body. It went from a believing to a knowing. I didn't have my doubts so that people could argue with me and it didn't matter because I just know I was at that point. I had other things happen to me. I had a past life regression, which was really interesting because it had a life review, and I thought that was fascinating. And then my facilitator for Life Between Lives came to San Diego to see people. I'd asked him to come. And so I saw him again in May of 2025 because I didn't learn, there were other things I wanted to learn. This experience, sorry, was even more amazing. And again, I'm home, and just the beauty of it. I learned a number of things though, too. I saw what had re-experienced how my family came together and how my soul had chosen these childhood experiences, the bullies, the family, to learn unconditional self-love. Because how do I learn? But by having the opposite, that I would discover what I discovered only by experiencing its opposite, that I was never a victim. I was never a victim. I saw past lives that I'd had lack of unconditional self-love and why I was working on that. I saw my soul come into my body at 7 months when my mom was 7 months pregnant. I felt that. I saw the creation of my soul and my soul group. I re-experienced that, the creation off of God. I understood for this, that's why the same reason the group of souls that's in my soul group or core group of souls is not on earth with me right now, except for that one person who I only saw briefly. And I just understood the whole family dynamics from a whole different perspective. I saw that I had 3 members of my council that had come forward, and I saw that there were an additional 4 that come forward for life reviews and other important things. I saw that they had been repeatedly trying, quote unquote, nudging me to get on course in the 90s, but it hadn't worked, and finally got me on course in 2024. I saw that my soul had not, unlike most of us, my soul had not wanted to come to Earth. It was like Earth was getting too difficult. And please, can I come someplace else just this once and have a rest or learn some other way besides Earth, which was getting too tough. And I finally agreed to come here because um, I would learn more here than someplace else, which was easier. And also, my counsel said, why is she here? They asked why Earth and why not some other place. And they said because this world needs her, which was surprising because I don't like talking about that because it sounds kind of egotistical. That's what they told me. I saw that I'd experienced these other worlds by going to like screening rooms where the soul steps into these other experiences, and it had been a big quote unquote discussion of a better world, a word about coming here. And then the experiences just continued. They just continued to, and if I described all of them, it would take days and days and days and days and days. It's just been one thing after another. I have a lot of experiences during meditations where I feel things. I haven't been much of a visual person, but I've just started to get more visual. I saw an aura on somebody. I I'm more empathic now. I haven't really developed mediumistic capabilities. I'm not ready for that, but I'm more empathic. So I can feel what other people are feeling, which can be hard. And just my whole life is a spiritual experience. I mean, are there sad times? Are there frustrating times? Sure. I'm in a body. I'm still here. But and I turned 70, and even last year too, my birthday, it's like, wow, I don't care. It's exciting because it's like, ooh, and for me to have thought that I would never have thought 2 years ago that I would ever not care about what my age is. And it's just it's a wild ride. I mean, it's fun. It really is fun. And I've just become open to all sorts of things.
Wow.
And I'm gonna stop here because it's kind of late, but I'll say that the most basic core thing that has changed for me, whether I'm having an experience or not an experience, and I said this earlier, is first of all, my willingness to at least try to see everybody as part of God, because I know they are, and look beyond the appearances. And number two, just the knowledge that this material world is not what it's about. In the long run, that doesn't mean it's not important or I should not care when somebody's suffering, but just knowing that I'm not this body, just knowing, I can feel it. I just know it, that I am an eternal, multidimensional being. I'm not the body. And it's so freeing. It's so freeing because it allows me to just experience everything from a whole different level. And that's where I'm at today. So I probably went over, but I appreciate your allowing me to share. And I just want to thank everybody for coming. And I thank you, Catherine. You've been one of my mentors and someone I just love listening to. And it's so nice, as opposed to 90s or early 2000s, to have groups that I can come and talk to about this. So, and listen about this. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Lynn. That was so beautiful. And wow, um your story is really, I think so many people can identify with your story because there's so much to it, as far as being in the material world and, being told that you're crazy if you were having experiences when you were little, which I'm sure many of us have had that too, right? And then you went through life and all these pivotal moments. But it's just amazing. And now you're just having fun, which is great, right? There's, some people dread getting older, but I I think there's something that's magical and really fun about getting older. We can get rid of all of that stuff from the past and heal and work through it. And you have done that. And that's just, it's incredible. I just love hearing your story. And I also love that you've tapped into the different healing modalities through the hypnosis, through the different hypnosis styles, right? There's life between lives, there's QHHT, there's
Yeah, I did have QHHT at the end of 2025. I forgot to mention that.
yeah, there's Brian Weiss's
Yeah,
method, the past life regressions. And so they're not just like the standard hypnosis, right?
right,
Stop smoking, lose weight, that kind of stuff. This is more like leveled up, I think, as far as getting in touch with our soul and
right.
our connection to why we're here and our purpose. So you were open to that and you delved into that, and that really helped to open you up even more, which is wonderful. So yeah, it's just really a beautiful story. So thank you so much for sharing that. There was a couple things I wrote down and that I was curious about. So you were talking about a Mira experience where you met your guide. There was a wall of mirrors. Now, was this in a dream state or a hypnosis state?
No,
Like,
it was a dream state. I had never been hypnotized. I call it a dream, but I know what it was April 17th, 1998, between 3 and 4 in the morning. And I remember the whole thing. What happened really quickly is I was in this room and my guide came behind me and told me who he was, gave me a name, and pointed to like to the left, which was like one mirror after another,
yeah,
and pointed and said telepathically, "Look at this one." And I was unhappy at the time. Look at this one. And it was me at about in my 20s, and I looked miserable.
right.
And then he said, "Well, look at this one." And it was me at about this age, and I looked like totally calm and at peace. And then
What?
it and then it ended. And I remember after the awe of this wore off, thinking, yeah, like that's gonna ever happen.
Oh, that's great. Now, were you asking to meet your guide? Were you curious about a guide, or did this just happen spontaneously?
It happened spontaneously. The first I'd heard about guides was when I read Michael Newton's book. I'd never heard of it before. What I
Okay.
was asking after I had this experience is to see Michael Newton because I wanted to learn more about the whole spirit realm. And yeah,
Mhm.
it was spontaneous. It was like, what?
Yeah,
I
that's
had a
great.
bunch of these in a 4 month period. Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Is this the same guide that you work with today? Because I know you work with a particular guide.
yeah, it's always been the same guide.
Always the same? Okay, because sometimes guides will change for people, depending on what they're doing in their life.
Right.
Like they will sometimes, there'll be different guides that come in. So I wasn't sure if he was one that kind of introduced you to things and then another one stepped
No,
in.
this one's my soul guide. He's been with me since my soul's creation.
Okay. And then
And
one more thing I wanted to ask. Were you going to say something else?
yeah, I'm just saying and we're on have such a close connection. I have not yet explored what other guides are there because I feel so
Yeah.
comfortable.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. You're happy with him.
Yeah.
Good. The other thing they showed you you went on a date with your soulmate and it was only that one time. So did you ever find out why you had that experience with that person in this life and why it was so brief and what was the purpose of that?
I'll try to be quick, but we had after the Earth was gonna be the place, and I had various life selections, and I won't go into those that I had narrowed it down to. I have a core soul group of 6 souls that we're all created from God together, okay?
Hmm.
And usually at least some of us are in an incarnation together as family members, friends, adversaries, whatever.
Right.
But we had decided, and I use English terms because I can't think of, we had decided that if I truly wanted to have this being different experience to come into my own in unconditional love, the group would not come with me because the connection was too close.
Right.
And then I think what I experienced happening is that the souls said, can't be without the soulmate for the entire lifetime. So this was the compromise.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, gotcha. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. All right. So I'm going to open it up for anybody else that would like to ask Lynn any questions or insights, feedback, anything you'd like to say to Lynn about her share today. Anybody want to you just use the raise hand on the bottom of the screen. And if you don't see a raised hand, you can hit the reactions button and that'll bring up a hand. All right. Anybody? There we go. Nick's coming in. All right, Nick, do you want to be? There he is.
I'm here.
All right.
Um, Actually, my job is pretty stressful too, Lynn.
Mm.
Mm, I uh I have generalized anxiety disorder. I was seeing a psychologist, and I kind of relate to you, because being a software engineer, it is a very, very high stressful job. And how do you handle all that stress? Because I'm semi-retired now.
I didn't very well. All I did is work. All I did is work, and just
Work,
feel
work, work.
anxious and depressed and just bury myself in the work and just feel more and more stressed. But briefly, it got really bad when COVID started because
Mhm.
all my quote unquote friends, which weren't really friends, they just wanted my help, were at work. And then we got sent out of the office for COVID because we had to stay, like we couldn't go to the office anymore. And I started to break down then because we were isolated. And this particular office decided that they didn't want anybody ever to come back to the office again. So as we worked more and more remotely, more and more years, the stress got worse and worse. But I didn't handle it. I avoided it. I just buried in the work.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Nick. Thank you for the question. All right. So now we have David. I'm going to bring David in a second. Hold on.
Go.
Hey, David.
Hi. Quick question. So, I was listening and you said you had a lot of depression and stuff like that. Did you have a lot of anger towards your family and religion? And if so, how did you end up dealing with that?
I I didn't, well, when I was a kid and stuff, I didn't know anything different. So I thought that's the way it was. When I studied it in the 90s, I did have a lot of anger. That was part of the problem. Like, why did you deny me this for? And I had to discover it on my own when I was 36. But when I saw the soul planning, I was like, no. And then briefly, very briefly, one thing I didn't share is that my mom has Alzheimer's. My dad passed in 2020. My mom has had Alzheimer's for 10 years now. And I went to see her in 2024 after a long hiatus because I couldn't handle her Alzheimer's. And I felt nothing but unconditional love for her. There was nothing but forgiveness. And this was even before I found out about the soul planning. It developed, grown to the point where I didn't have any anger. And my mom still, now that has Alzheimer's, she's now seeing the spirit world. So I think that's really fascinating. You know,
That's great. Wow.
yeah,
Talk about full circle, right? Your mom
yeah.
went from being a total atheist. Now she's seeing the spirit world. That's wonderful. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else have any questions, comments, feedback, insights? Shirley, let me bring you in. Here she is.
Okay, thank you, Lynn, for your sharing your story. One thing that when you said that you were given medication, that just, it's just like that's the way they did things back then. But hopefully now, it's changing. So that's a good thing. But I want to ask you about your mom, being you mentioned she is still alive. Are you able to share with her? And she's able to share with you about what she sees or whatever, and to kind of have some kind of a healing of the relationship going on.
Well, a couple of things. I'm still on some medication because there are brain things involved, although I'm starting to get off of some of it, and it has to be slow because I've been taking medication since 1986. But yeah, that's what they did those days. My mom, I when she got Alzheimer's in 2016, I was really into my stuff, so I just avoided her, and then I was into my that was the time I was into my work all the time. And so when my dad, crossed over, we had a memorial or a celebration for him in 2021. We had to wait because of COVID, and then we did that, and I saw my mom, and she didn't know anybody or anything. She was pretty
Mhm.
much, and it bothered me so much I didn't go back till 2024, and I'd done a lot of healing. As far as then, no, there was no communication. She didn't recognize me in 2024. It's the caregiver who first told me that she was communicating with my father and her mother and saying, "You're in the light." When I went in November of last year, she was trying to communicate with me. I can't share with I it was what she was doing is she was actually communicating somewhat. She was saying things like, because with everybody else she's what she says is incoherent. Um, but I had been remotely communicating with her, telepathically. So she started to communicate with me and say things like, "I want to go home." She said that a number of times while looking out at what she was seeing. I said when you I said that's something that you can do when you're ready, and I said that to her, and there was a number of communications like that. Like she said, "Well, I don't know how," and I said, "When you're ready, just let go." And she tried to force it. No, I mean it. She said, "I can't." And I said, "Don't force it." And I asked her to let me know she was okay once she did go home. And she said, "How do I do that?" And I said, "Just think of me." And then she did like a life review and said, looked at me and said, you have a really good life. I did not live a good life." And then I said, "Mom, we were exactly where we needed to be." Um, and she smiled. So there was communication, but I couldn't get her out of her fears and confusion because of the way she was brought up. It was just too, I've tried to unconfuse her about, you know, passing and what it would be like. And she was afraid and confused. She spent 90 something years, not believing in anything.
Yeah.
And I really tried and it didn't work. And she has a caregiver. I won't go into this, but the caregiver is really restrictive of her and stuff, won't let her move much around. So it was unsuccessful in loosening her, lessening her fears and getting through to her. I tried again in December and I was unsuccessful in, having calming her down about the whole process.
Mhm.
So then it came to me, well, she has guides and others to help her when she crosses over. I've done what I can do, and she'll call to me if she wants me to help her. But it was communication, but it wasn't helping her, and it was a little, I don't know if it was helping her. It didn't seem to be. You never know. But I was shocked. What I was shocked at is that I was able to communicate with her at all and that she recognized me because she hadn't recognized anybody for years. Or nor had she communicated with anybody for years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow,
Wow.
that's awesome. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you, Shirley. Yeah, you know what I was thinking, Lynn? I mean, even though it might not seem that it was helpful from your perspective, it could have been very helpful for her, and so everything is intention. And so
Mhm.
just that your intention was to go there and help her, you know. There's
Yeah.
there was some lucidity there where she smiled at you and she understood what you were saying. So it was getting in. And
It's getting in.
when she needs it, I'm sure it'll be available to her. It all went into her heart. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was helpful, I'm sure. All right. Anybody else? Anybody else have anything they want to say? Well, this was so wonderful. Thank you so much. Oh, I see Melissa and David have their hand up. Here we go. Hold on, guys.
Oh, hi, Lynn.
Hi.
Hey.
I have a question. So, all this weekend and even this morning, I was picking up Mary Magdalene, and I had learned some things about her this morning from watching a few documentaries. It was very early this morning. And one of the things that I learned, and I never knew this, was that they said that she went to France after the persecution, and that apparently her relationship with Jesus was a soul connection, and it came in through many lifetimes together that they had. So it was like the basically reincarnation again. And also today, I have picked up some stuff. When I was out with David, it was almost as if I was acting like his lawyer. And the place that we had went to had all of these signs, like I kept seeing like names of stores that said M&M over and over again, and also the Blue Rose. Like I went to the bathroom, they had a Blue Rose in there, and I was like, Dave, the Blue Rose is in there. I was like, I wonder if like the ancestors and everybody is here. So I guess my question is, did you have any experiences with Mary Magdalene?
I never have, only because I probably because I think, and this is just my belief, that we get what we need. Each person has a different experience. And since my background since I knew nothing about Mary Magdalene until really June of 2025, when I went to a spiritual experiencers conference, it was not something I would have understood if I had experienced it.
Okay.
Now that I'm learning more, I wouldn't be surprised to be that if I do experience it. But at the time I had the experiences, it would. If she had, she wouldn't come to me because she'd know it would make no sense to me. I'd be like, what, you know? But I do know or I don't know. I mean, I believe that what you're saying is accurate. I know there are gospels that were written out of the Bible that talk about reincarnation and talk about Mary Magdalene and Jesus and their relationship, and
Yeah.
how spiritual and what a teacher she is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she was very, very important, and they wrote her out of the Bible. So, yep. All right.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank
Thank you.
you. Thank you. All right. Anybody else? I'm just checking to see. All right. So, Vera, come on in, Vera.
Hi, I didn't have a question, but I just wanted to say that I found your story just amazing, and just the way you came upon everything and had those early experiences. Your guides were always with you, and I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming here and sharing your story with us.
Well, thank you. It's my pleasure. Thank you. And thank you for being here.
Thank you, Vera. All right. I'm going to bring Mike in.
Well, I have a question. How did you raise in a family with all atheists. How did you join? You become Jewish? I just
Well, the heritage is Jewish. So, my father's father was a rabbi, and my mother's lineage is Jewish. At some point, I mean, it's a Jewish culture, so they didn't celebrate Christmas. And at some point, they became atheists, and it was before, I don't know if it started with my parents or their parents. What they told me was when I was a kid was that my dad's father was a rabbi and he became an atheist, so he gave it up. I don't know,
Oh,
but
wow.
yeah, I don't know what happened.
that's interesting for me because I raised in a family atheist, but
Uh, okay.
I I I've been raised the way I've been raised. I've been told we never died. I mean, we have soul.
Oh,
When we were atheists, we still have we said we were soul. We never died.
That's interesting.
yeah, that is interesting.
Wow.
Yeah, I guess there's different types of atheists, right? There are
Right.
atheists that
I mean, that's
don't.
the way I am. But my brother is different. He thinks we die, we're gone. But my dad told me we never die. When I asked him, did he tell you that? He said he never say anything to him.
Huh.
That'd be interesting. But plus a lot of things my dad told me, he never told him. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did
Well,
they
my
believe in reincarnation, your parents, Mike?
No, the only thing that my dad told me, he said, we never die, we always live forever. And he even told me about the life in other planets. He said they exist.
huh,
Oh, okay.
But he never told my brother any of this.
interesting.
Because I had talked to him recently, he said he never told him anything.
Hmm.
I think he was a starseed too.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
possible.
he knew I was a starseed.
Yeah, very interesting. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, they told us anybody who believed that was just, that that we that there was a soul and that we survived physical death was just stupid because it
Real.
was unscientific, which is funny because Albert Einstein believes in that we never die. So
Yeah,
we believe that. It's pretty funny.
it's very interesting how people are so unique, right? In their beliefs and their journeys. So, all right.
It's something my dad told me. He said, we are like energy. We change from one form to another.
Yep,
That's what he said.
that's
That's what I
right.
mean. He means we have soul.
Yeah. All right.
Albert Einstein said, "We never die, we just go home." I thought that was beautiful.
Interesting. Thank you. All right. So unless we have anyone else, okay, Nick's going to come in. Hold on, Nick.
So talking about lineages, my father, um, my grandfather, we all believe in reincarnation. Hinduism is a religion that believes in birth and rebirth, death, rebirth.
Mhm.
Um, so, reincarnation, my dad passed away, but before that, before he passed away, he told me that I'm going to be somebody else in the next life. And
Mm.
he was so sweet. He was in the hospital. He was slowly, his life was going, you know, but he was in the hospital 4 months and he finally passed away. But he instilled great values and ethics and morality in us, four of his kids. But Lynn, have you ever thought about after life, like reincarnation, maybe?
Well, that's what it's all about for me. That's what my experience is. In my experience, I saw past lives. I mean, I saw them during these sessions. And one thing I didn't share is that, and I had this past life regression, which is on my website. One thing and I've always known that that's, at least for me, again, it's my journey that there is reincarnation. I mean, and the sessions I had with Michael Newton and the people who followed them are what my soul is doing between those incarnations.
Mm.
And I started, what I didn't share is once I started doing these, I started having spontaneous memories of past lives. I would just have a little bit and I'd start writing and then more would come. And the one regression I did do into a past life, I someone ran it through some kind of AI program or something. It was in the 1200s that it happened. And I didn't have enough information to find the people, but they found it to be historically accurate, which was pretty amazing for me. Like, oh my gosh.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you know what I want to remind, I don't know if Nick, if you were here in the beginning, but Lynn actually, as a little girl, when she was little, she had memories of being a little boy, and those were past life memories. And her parents, her mom thought, she was crazy and brought her to a psychiatrist as a little girl because of those early memories. So, yeah. So it's right from the beginning. I think you were aware of that, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I see a couple more hands up. So thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Nick.
Okay, great. I just wanted to say, Lynn, thanks for sharing the story. When you're talking, I'm a little under the weather, so I've forgotten some things you've already said. But when you're talking about seeing the light or being more of an empath, and to me, it sounds like you're talking about Vedanta, which is like about non-duality, one
Mhm.
consciousness. That's what it sounds like to me. So you feeling people being an empath more now, which is basically that one consciousness, that one energy. So you're connecting to that oneness, but as awareness. So that's
Right.
that one consciousness as one of everything.
Mhm.
Remembering all your old lives as a little boy is just the Akashic record, as I say, which is just a level of consciousness that you've accessed. So you're becoming more and more a part of that oneness. That's just fantastic.
Well, I really appreciate that. That's that's wonderful. That's what I want. That's one of my goals. I actually went to the Akashic Records in one of these sessions, not the whole records, but I saw my soul's books and book. It had my eternal soul's name on it because my soul has a name, and that's where I saw the creation of the soul group from God and my first life and a bunch of
Mhm.
other life. It was beautiful.
Right, right. So I hear what you're saying. So I've had some experiences. So the book of life, your book is written. Just one thing you should know that I've come to my experience. If you evolve as consciousness, as awareness on that level, your book of life is not written in stone. You can still change
Well, I
everything.
did not see, they did not reveal to me anything it stopped with the incarnation I'm in now. We did not open it to anything in the future. What I said was the future is potentialities, and we weren't looking at the future. We were looking at past lives to see where some of the patterns came from, the past lives from the book. So yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
So if I could say again, if you being an intelligent lady, if you look into quantum, the future and the past are happening now,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
You're doing it
Right.
now, done it already, and you're being it, and you're going to be it all right now. So which I'm saying is also your future is being written right now. Also, it can be altered. Anyways, I'll leave it at that. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, that's a mind blower. That I know that's true, but for the human mind, that's like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you. And that brings us into a question that Yumi has, and she wrote it in the chat. She says, did you see several possibilities in your future or the one future you saw? Because you said you had seen yourself at this age. So,
It was a single scene. It was an image of me as just me. The person is much more peaceful, just standing there and being peaceful. And that was the end of it. I didn't see what the person was doing. It was just like an image. If you were to look in a mirror, like I'm looking at me now, it was me standing there. No, and I knew I was peaceful and serene. It was just a look on me.
nice.
I have, and I know we're getting over, I have had sessions where I've seen future
Mhm.
And it's always been 4 or 5 futures. This can happen, or this can happen, or this can happen, or this can happen.
Right.
I've had dreams. When I had all those dreams, I had futures about Earth's future. I mean, way far in the future. One
Mhm.
was pleasant, and one was not so pleasant. And I always understood it to be potentialities because of free will.
Right. Exactly. All right, Mike, I see you have your hand up. Did you want to say something else?
Yeah, I just want to say, mention something. I was watching Dolores Cannon, and she
Mhm.
said, in the past, our past life, we've experienced both sex.
Yeah.
So that's what she was talking about. She said some people, they don't want to accept it, but we did
Right.
it. We all done it.
Yes.
Yes.
Exactly. Exactly. Thank you. All right. All right. Are we good? Okay. So I just want to say thank you so much, Lynn. This has been such a blessing to have you here tonight and to share your journey with us. And Lynn has a book. Do you want to tell us what the name of your book is? If you guys want to check it out, it's on Amazon.
Yeah, I can type it in. It's about my journey. It has the whole story.
Okay. What's the name of it?
I'm going to type it in.
Okay.
No, because it's long. I'll just type. I won't type in the subtitle, and you can just look for my name and find it. And it's about my journey. It has all the childhood stuff and the soul planning and some of the things I went through at work. And it also has a lot of quotes from the Life Between Lives sessions. So see what
Great. And that just came out in December. So
December, yeah.
congratulations. That's wonderful. So,
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really blessed to be on here.
oh, it was so nice. It was so wonderful. And thank you for being here. And thank you everyone for being here tonight.
Yeah,
And
yeah. Thank you everybody for coming. I appreciate it.
yeah, and thank you for your shares and your questions and insights. So I just want to say that next week we will have our safe space sharing group. And so that'll be on the first Tuesday of the month. And yeah, so have a great week, everyone. It was a blessing being here with all of you and many blessings. Stay safe, stay warm if you're in the blizzard areas. Yeah,
Thank you again, Catherine.
you're
Thank
welcome.
you.
You, Lynn.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Bye, everybody. Good
Bye.
night.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Good
you.
Bye-bye.
night.
Night.